So admit it. Do you have a soft spot for Martha? I do. I can relate to her. She's working hard, and she feels like no one appreciates it. She's not getting any help, and she's very upset about that. We can probably relate to that, a lot of us. But we notice that Jesus does not baby her on this issue. He does not let her get away with her outburst. And we can't let ourselves get away with it either. Is it true, what I said in the beginning, for you, that when you heard Martha and Mary, you said, oh yeah, I know this one? We often do that if we go to church over a long period of time. But when that happens, we need to kind of take a step back and see if we can get back to basics, reestablish the facts of the story. So one of the facts of the story that was hidden to me up until I worked with it this week was that Martha was the one who welcomed Jesus to the house. Martha was. She was the host. Mary either was just there because she lived there too, or because she was also a guest of her sister. But Martha was the sole host. And if you've ever hosted someone for dinner, you know how hard it is, because there are two things you have to do simultaneously, and they're opposed to each other. You have to make sure that the food is hot and the drinks are cold, which is a full-time job, and you have to entertain the guests. You have to make sure that everything in the kitchen is done, but you can't neglect the people sitting around the cheese and the crackers either. So, what do? Martha was determined to do it all perfectly, and she kept herself busy in the kitchen, making sure everything was just right. And another thing that we hear in the story is she never once asks for help. She never says, hey, Mary, excuse me, can you come in here and help me butter the crescent rolls? She never says that. So we realize that Martha is the sole host. Mary and Jesus are the guests. And then we get to this moment where Martha loses it. She can't take it anymore. She is seething with resentment, and it comes out spraying everywhere like a fire hose. And she starts with her sister. She throws her under the bus immediately. Look how lazy my sister is. But then, unbelievably, she even turns on the guest. She says to Jesus, don't you even care? Don't you care all this work that I have to do with this lazy sister? This is what we call, classically, a martyr complex. That's what that is. That's what we're hearing. That's a martyr complex, where somebody feels that they're working so hard, nobody helps them. And so if this is going to happen to us, and I know it's happened to me at least a few times this week, if this is going to happen to us, then we need to figure out what are the warning signs so that we can stop this from turning into a disaster like happened at the dinner that Martha gave. The warning sign that we are going close to having a martyr complex is when we start having self-pitying thoughts. Self-pitying thoughts are dangerous, and they are bad for us. Do you ever have that? I know I do. A case of the poor me's. Oh, it's so hard. No one understands me. No one tries. No one gets me. Whenever we have those feelings, it means that we're about to go over the edge, and we have to really be on high alert. The problem with self-pity, the reason why it is so unwholesome for us, is because it is a sign that we have a hidden agenda. Self-pity is an alert to us that we want something in exchange for whatever we're doing for someone else. It's a warning for us. So, when we do something like have someone over for dinner, we should do it because we like them and enjoy their company, because we like cooking maybe and love seeing people eat good food. But someone with a martyr complex doesn't do that. They have you over, but there's a hidden reason why they want you there. Maybe it's so that you'll say thank you. Maybe it's so you'll tell other people what a great host they are. Maybe it's so you'll have them over to your house next week. But whatever it is, they might not realize it, but there's something in it for them. The way we know we have a hidden agenda is if we do something for someone else and the way they respond is hurtful to us for some reason. That's a sign of a hidden agenda. So, if someone gives us a present and we say, oh, thank you, I'll open this later, and we put it over on a shelf, and they say, oh, well, that's a sign that you wanted something to happen with that present, that it wasn't just a free gift, it was something that had an agenda, strings attached to it. This martyr complex can get pretty rough because when we have strings attached, it can really take us off track from our path being a disciple. I know a woman who was very excited to volunteer at a soup kitchen, and she was talking all about how much it meant to her that she was going to be able to feed the poor. She said, there's so many hungry people out there, and I want to make a difference. So I didn't see her for a few months in a row, and when I saw her again, I asked her, so how are things going at the soup kitchen? And she said, oh, I don't volunteer there anymore. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. What happened? And she said, I would go there, and a lot of the people wouldn't even say thank you. I'd give them free food, and they wouldn't even be gracious about it. They would just move on down the line. She said, it made me so mad. That's a hidden agenda. And we know it's so hidden, she didn't even mind saying it out loud to me. She didn't realize that what she was saying was, I was going to help the poor, but what I wanted was for them to say thank you. So when they didn't, I stopped helping the poor. That's a hidden agenda. That martyr complex is something we really have to nip in the bud because it can take us way off course. Many of you might remember Sister Anne Bryan Smolin. She was a famous sister in our diocese. Many people loved her. A lot of people considered her kind of a saint. She died a couple of years ago. She was a teacher and a counselor, and she was very loving, but she was very strict with people who had a martyr complex. She would not let people get away with it. So when someone started getting a case of the poor me's, oh, I work so hard, oh, no one appreciates me, she would not have it, and she would stop them dead in their tracks. And she would say, get off the cross. We need the wood. So, before someone says that to us, maybe we can try to nip it in the bud ourselves. This week seems like an invitation for us to take a look at how to avoid this. If this is a fault that you have, I know it's a fault I have, where can we start? I think the starting place is to monitor our self-pitying thoughts. When we have the poor me's, to recognize that as a warning sign. We have to be strict with ourselves so that we don't wind up having a disaster like Martha had when she hosted Jesus. We want to nip it in the bud before that point. And it seems to me that we can kind of break the spell of self-pity when we just admit to ourselves that every human being does things for multiple reasons, and there's always something in it for us. If I do something nice for you, part of what might be in it for me is I get a nice feeling of doing something nice. And that's a reward. If we can recognize that, if we can say to ourselves, what is in this for me? And recognize that there always is something, then maybe it can break that spell. Because Jesus doesn't let Martha get away with this. And we can't let ourselves either.